Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Nick Robin, and we have a great show for you today. I want to send out a congratulations to Joel Embiid, who after 9 years in America has finally secured a driver's license. Glad to see someone is being productive during this pandemic. Hopefully, he can add an NBA championship to that list of accomplishments as well. And before we begin, or another update on COVID, it looks like cases have spiked recently in a bunch of major U.S. cities. So it might be best to stay inside for a little bit and maybe self-quarantine so we're not due for another lockdown in the next month or so. Because from what I've heard, the second wave is always the worst. So for today, we have a special finals-themed edition. Since we are in the middle of June, I've been watching a lot of highlights on television, seeing a lot of anniversaries from finals from the last decade. Saw the Kobe's 2010 finals, saw the 2008 Celtics, and so since we are in this month, I thought it might be best to run through some of the best finals what-ifs from the last 15 years. So today, again, special finals-themed show where I'll be covering the best what-ifs, teams, and matchups we wish we would have seen in the best single games final performances from the last 15 years. So from 2005 to 2019. And as always, stick around to the end of the show for my top 10 list of the week. So let us begin here. Best NBA what-ifs of the last 15 years. The number one what-if I have is 2013 Finals Game 6. What if Ray Allen does not hit game-tying three? So we all remember back in 2013, Heat are down to their last possession. LeBron bricks a three. Chris Bosh gets the rebound, throws it to Ray Allen in the corner, and hits probably the most clutch shot in NBA history. It was Game 6, not Game 7, so the Heat still had to go out and win the next game, which they ended up doing, securing back-to-back champions for the Heat and LeBron's second championship. So let's see what happens if Ray Allen bricks a shot. Tim Duncan would now be 5-0 in the finals. You could be saying that he's the greatest player of all time, or making the argument of being the greatest player of all time over Michael Jordan. Because then, and a couple years later, the next year actually, he wins a championship with the Spurs, putting him now at 6-0, tying him with Michael Jordan for the most unblemished finals record. So that's one storyline. He misses a shot. Tim Duncan is now in the conversation for greatest player of all time instead of outside the top 7 or 8. And then let's look at it from LeBron's point of view. If he loses that title, that now puts him at 1-3 all time. Maybe they end up breaking up the Heat that next season. Maybe they trade Chris Bosh, or LeBron ends up leaving or demanding a trade. So we don't know what's going to shake up then. We know next year they did lose to the Spurs. So, I mean, this changes a lot of things in NBA history. Again, Tim Duncan, we might see him as the best player, as one of the greatest players of all time if he wins that, because, again, he'll be 5-0 in the finals. And again, in game 7, he did have the opportunity to hit a bank shot to win it, but ended up missing that. So there were a couple opportunities that he missed out on in that series. My next what if is the Golden State 5-peat. So let's put that into perspective. Only a couple teams have won 3 titles in a row, that being the 2000 to 2002 Lakers, the Boston Celtics of the 60s, the Michael Jordan Bulls from 91 to 93, and 96 to 98. Those are the only teams and franchises to win 3 titles in a row. So the opportunity for the Warriors to win 5 in a row would be unprecedented. So let's look back at those 5 consecutive finals appearances. So in 2015, they beat the depleted Cavs in 6 games. Let us remember, though, that LeBron was playing with 2 undrafted players as starters in Timothy Mozgov and Matthew Dellavedova. But they still won in 6 games. Iggy got the MVP. So that's 1 in a row. The next year, the Warriors go 73-9. They make the finals again, once again, against LeBron and the Cavs. They're up 3-1. Draymond Green has the unfortunate nut punch on LeBron in Game 4, suspended for Game 5, and as we know, the Cavs end up coming back and winning in 7. So that could have been 2 in a row. They had 3 chances to close it out, and were unable to. So this is where it gets tricky, though, because we know after the 2016 season, Kevin Durant ends up coming over to the Warriors. But if the Warriors win in 2016, I don't think Durant's not able to. Durant would not come to a 2-time defending championship team. We all know how much criticism he got for coming on board in 2017 after his team blew a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals. So the idea of him coming to the Warriors after the Warriors winning 2 consecutive championships just doesn't make any sense. But I think even with the core that the Warriors did have, I think they'd have the talent and the ability to make it back to the finals. But for argument's sake, let's just say Kevin Durant came back anyways. Let's say Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors after they won 2 championships. He jumped on the bandwagon, even more so than we already know about. So in 2017, Durant's on the team. They win 4-1 to the Cavs. The next season, Durant's still on the team. The Dubs sweep after J.R. Smith boneheaded play in Game 1. 4 consecutive titles. Next, we have 2019. Last season, as we saw, after 4 consecutive finals appearances, the wheels started to come off. Durant injures himself early on in the playoffs. He hurries himself back for the finals and ends up injuring his Achilles. Same game, next game in Game 6, Klay Thompson comes in. Game 6, Klay. It's a lot of tough shots. Puts the Warriors on the brink of winning Game 6. Ends up tearing his ACL. So they didn't win in 2019. They won 3 titles in 5 years. Still a great accomplishment. Not many teams in NBA history have even done that much. But the opportunity to win 5 in a row would have put them in a conversation all by themselves. I know the Celtics won 8 titles back in the 60s, but the average amount of teams in the league then was 10. And there was only a couple rounds of playoffs. So the enormity of winning 5 consecutive titles in a competitive league in the 2010s is nearly unprecedented. My next what if: Cleveland does not win the 2016 title. This opens up a lot of sliding doors. Let's start with LeBron. If LeBron never wins a title in Cleveland, is he ever able to leave? Does he feel guilty about leaving? Because he came back to Cleveland in 2014 because he made a promise to win them a title. He wanted to come back to the city, to the town that he grew up in, to bring them a title after nearly 50 years without a title in Cleveland. So if they don't win the title in 2016, do they win the title in 2017? Because in 2017, their offense was even better than the year before. Maybe the Warriors maybe the Warriors end up not getting Kevin Durant, as I mentioned in what if number 2. So in this case, let's say Durant does not come to the Warriors, because the chances of him going to a team that won back-to-back championships, again, is very unlikely. So where does Durant end up going? I think the best choice was the Celtics. They had a young team back in 2016-17. They still have a young team now. They had a great coach in Brad Stevens, still do. And it gave them the opportunity to only face LeBron when he made it to the finals. So, I mean, he did that now by going to the Brooklyn Nets, but there's just a lot of dominoes that fell that would have fallen if Cleveland does not win the title in 2016. What if number 4? What if the Heat do not lose to the Mavs in 2011? Do we look at Dirk's career in a whole different light? I think right now he's in the top 25 to 30 players, maybe top 18 to 25 players of all time. Do we push him maybe into the late 30s or 40s without that one championship? Because in my opinion, his one championship with the Mavs equates to 3 championships. Because he won that one I wouldn't say all by himself, because nobody's won a championship all by themselves. But he didn't do it with a big 3 or a big 2, but a good team surrounding him with Shawn Marion, Tyson Chandler, Jason Terry, and an older Jason Kidd. So I think that puts him in, again, if he loses that finals, he's now 0-2 all time, and I don't see that team ever making a serious run and making another finals appearance as we saw moving forward. So I think that really changes how we feel about Dirk. And then let's go back to LeBron. He wins that title. He's now 1-1 in the NBA Finals. Does he end up staying with the Heat longer, more long-term, past those 4 years? Maybe he wins a couple more titles and then leaves earlier than expected to go back to Cleveland. Again, we won't know, but maybe we see the Heat go on a rampage through the entire league and maybe end up winning those 5, 6, 7 championships that LeBron promised back in 2010. And my last what if. And this one might rub people the wrong way, but what if Kobe never wins titles in 2009 and 2010? How do we now view him historically? Is Shaq now considered the better player? Is he even in top 10 consideration all time? Is Dwayne Wade now the second best 2-guard of all time and gets more of the Michael Jordan comparisons than Kobe Bryant with only 3 championships? And Dwayne Wade would also have 3 championships. Does Kobe end up jumping ship after losing again in 2009, after losing in 2008 to the Celtics? Does he go form his own big 3 somewhere else? Does he end up committing to the Clippers, as the rumors were early on in his career? And let's look at the 2009 finals in particular. They went up against the Magic with a young Dwight Howard, and the Magic were before their time. Dwight Howard in the middle and 3-point shooters all around. Let's say they beat the Lakers in that 2009 series. How do we now think about Dwight Howard? Maybe he ends up staying in Orlando. We don't see him jumping from team to team to team, and maybe he embraces Orlando and decides to stay there. Very interesting how one player winning can affect another player's whole career. So we're done here talking about the greatest NBA what-ifs of the past 15 years. Coming up on the break, after this break, we will have finals matchups we wish we'd have seen or teams that should have made it to the finals. So stay tuned, and again, wait till the end of the show, and you will hear my top 10 NBA Finals teams. Not just the winners, but the losers as well, of the past 15 years.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back with you now on the GSMC Podcast Network. And before we went into the break, we discussed the best NBA what-ifs, NBA Finals what-ifs from the past 15 years. We looked at Ray Allen's shot and what if he ended up not making that game-tying shot in Game 6 of the 2013 Finals. We discussed the Golden State potential five-peat. What would happen if Cleveland did not win the title in 2016? What if the Heat had lost to the Mavs, or what if the Heat had beaten the Mavs in 2011? And lastly, what it would have done to Kobe's legacy if he didn't win titles in 2010 and 2011. So our next big topic of the day is finals matchups we wish we would have seen, or teams that should have made it to the finals. And I think the number one matchup everyone in the late 2000s, early 2010s was looking for was LeBron versus Kobe. So in 2009, Kobe makes the finals against the Magic. LeBron's Cavs fell short against the Magic in 6 games. You might remember that LeBron hit maybe the most clutch three-pointer of his career in Game 2 at the buzzer to tie the series. In 2010, Kobe, once again, makes the finals, this time against the Celtics. LeBron's Cavs are embarrassed in the Eastern Conference Finals, losing the last 3 games to the Celtics by a combined 51 points. All 4 losses were by a combined 69 points. So just completely ran out of the building, and as we all know, after that season, he went on television and announced his decision to take his talents to South Beach. In 2011, the Lakers are going after the three-peat, come up against a great Mavs team, end up getting swept with the ugly Bynum shoulder, or the Bynum hit on tiny little JJ Barea in the final Game 4. I think that's the first time I remember finding out who JJ Barea was, because I think he was somewhat of an unknown commodity for that playoff run, and then all of a sudden you see JJ Barea, or seeing LeBron James unable to post up a 6-foot JJ Barea in the finals that year, and just thinking, where the hell did this guy come from? Looks like he should be playing in a rec center. And then I'd say the last opportunity for LeBron and Kobe to face each other in the finals was 2013. Chris Paul was supposed to be traded to the Lakers. The NBA commissioner vetoed that trade. I think with Chris Paul, that would have given them a legitimate shot at making the finals against that year's Heat. And as we know, Kobe played 40-plus minutes down the stretch that year in order to just get his Lakers team to the playoffs, because the whole Dwight Howard-Kobe experiment did not work out well at all. Kobe ends up blowing out his knee, misses almost the entire next season, injures himself again, and kind of the end of Kobe's career. I think with Chris Paul, he would have played near his 40s, almost into his 40s, because it would have given him a lot less. The ball would have been in his hand a lot less. I mean, I don't know. We never know with Kobe Bryant, because he did like having the ball in his hands at all time, but I think with a player like Chris Paul, someone that he probably trusted to take over in big games. So LeBron versus Kobe, the two best players in the 2000s and going into the 2010s. We remember the great puppet commercials that they had on ESPN leading up to the finals, and how much, especially me as a 15, 16-year-old, just gushed at the idea of seeing the two best players in the world face off in the finals. We've never seen anything like that before. We never saw Michael versus a young Kobe in the finals. We never saw LeBron versus the next best player in the league. It's just a matchup that I think the whole world wanted. I mean, let me take you back there. We did see LeBron versus Durant, but we saw it in OKC before Durant really hit his stride. We saw it again with the Warriors, but that team was a juggernaut that I don't think any team in the history of NBA could ever beat. Looking at the Warriors, you have 4 Olympians. You have Draymond, you have Curry, you have Klay Thompson, Durant. You have 2 of the best sharpshooters of all time in Curry and Thompson. You have one of the best 7-foot snipers of all time in Kevin Durant. You have one of the best rotational players of all time in Draymond Green. You have Iguodala, who won Finals MVP in 2015. So saying Durant versus LeBron in those 3 consecutive finals, it's not the same. Durant had way more help, and it was just an unfair advantage. Moving on. Another matchup I wish we would have seen was Duncan versus Shaq on the Heat. So Duncan faced the Shaq Lakers in the postseason 5 times. In 99, the Spurs swept the Lakers, going on to win their first championship. In 2001, the Western Conference Finals, the Lakers demolished the Spurs, winning by a total of 89 points over the course of the series. And as we know, the Lakers went on to go 15-1 in that postseason. Their only loss coming when Ray Allen dropped 48 in that Game 1 finals to the Tyrone Lue step over. Next year, the Lakers in the Western Conference semis, again win in 5 games. In 2003, Spurs win in 6, going on to win their second title. And the last matchup we ever see of Duncan and Shaq in their primes is when the Lakers won in 6, going on to play the Pistons in 2004. So I think something we never got to see was that Miami Heat versus Spurs, Duncan Spurs. I think in that 2005 season, the Heat blew a 3-2 lead in the 2005 Eastern Conference Finals, losing in Game 7 at home to the Pistons. I think that would have been an awesome finals, even though we did get a good finals that year as the Pistons lost in 7 games to the Spurs. But I think it would have been fun to watch a still in his prime Shaq go up against Tim Duncan while he was on the Heat. I'm going to touch quickly on the potential matchup in Duncan's lost three-peat from 2005 to 2007. So in 2006, the Spurs lose the Eastern Conference semifinals Game 7 at home to the Mavs. The Mavs were down 104-101 going into the last 20 seconds. Nowitzki has the ball, is fouled on an and one by Ginobili on a drive to the basket. Ends up tying the game, and the Mavs win in overtime. They go on to play the Heat. They lose in 6 games. I really think that Spurs team was the better team. I think they could have came in to 2006. I think that 2006 Heat team was not as strong as that 2005 Heat team, actually, that lost in the Eastern Conference Finals. So the Spurs win in 2005. They won in 2007. In 2006, they lose in Game 7 to the Mavs. I think that was their opportunity, the three-peat. That adds another championship to Tim Duncan's resume that he, again, doesn't have. That now puts him, going back to what we talked about, he could have been 5-0 if he had won in 2013. If he had won this one as well, because I think he would have beaten that Heat team, he could have been 6-0. So a lot of sliding door moments into how good Tim Duncan, how underrated, I think, how much we take for granted of Tim Duncan. I mean, I personally rate him as the 7th greatest player of all time, but if he had just won a couple of these matchups, the guy could easily be 6-0, 7-0, possibly even 8-0 in the NBA Finals. If he goes 6-0 or 7-0, what do we think about him now? We'd probably put him above even Michael Jordan as the greatest winner in professional sports. Next team that I think we did see in the finals in 2012, but we really missed out on many other great years, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder, the dynasty that never was. I mean, realistically, how many titles could they have won? So in 2012, in the strike-shortened season, they make their first finals appearance with Harden, Durant, and Westbrook. 3 future MVPs, all on the same team. This, as we know, James Harden the next year is traded to Houston, ends up having an excellent career and turns into the superstar he now is today. But realistically, how many titles could this Oklahoma City team have won? Because honestly, if they had stayed together, I think they're pound for pound better than the Warriors. I really realistically think they could have won at least 3 titles. And if Harden is never traded to the Rockets, does this prevent the whole Big 3 era? And our teams now becoming more homegrown, maybe taking the philosophy from the 76ers and OKC, who we know they drafted Durant in 2007, they drafted Westbrook in 2008, and they drafted Harden in 2009. But then we have to look at it from Harden's perspective. Would he be willing to stay and be okay being the third banana on this superstar team? We know a lot of players in these leagues, they have egos, they want to get paid, they want the ball in their hands, they want to be scoring the baskets. So being able to balance that is always tough as well. So we never know what things would have looked like if Harden had stayed in Oklahoma, decided to be the third banana, be that 6th man off the bench for some instant offense. I think it probably worked out best for Durant. He went over to the Warriors, he won 2 titles, and I think if anything, Westbrook got the short end of the stick as he got stuck in OKC for several years after, never won more than 50 games after Durant lost, even with Paul George. And then moving forward to probably the most exciting team from mid to late 2000s, Steve Nash's Suns. In my opinion, the best team in the last 15 years to not even make a finals appearance. Let's look at the best opportunity he had in 2007 Western Conference Finals against the San Antonio Spurs. Nash driving to the basket, gets hip checked by Robert Horry. This leads to a bench brawl, and I think one of the stupidest rules in the NBA. So Amari Stoudemire, Boris Diaw, whenever a player leaves the bench, he is automatically suspended for the next game. In my opinion, let the boys rumble. Let them get a few punches in. It's good for ratings. It's exciting. It adds to the flair of the game and the playoffs. But instead, as soon as you leave the bench, you're automatically suspended. The next game, which the Suns unfortunately lost, Game 5, and ended up losing in 6 to the Spurs. The Suns were 61-21 that year. One of the best teams in the Nash Suns era. As we know, the Spurs end up winning. They go on to play a young LeBron James. The Spurs end up sweeping the Cavs. And I think any team in the Western Conference Finals could have came out that year and beaten that Cavs team because they were very undermanned. LeBron was really their only productive player outside of maybe Larry Hughes and Ilgauskas. But I really think Nash's Suns team would have easily, if not 1-4, at least 1-5 against that Cavs team. And this kind of drastically changes. I mean, if Nash wins a title or 2, we drastically rethink how we place him in the history of the game. We put him, right now he's in that outside of that 25 range, probably in the 28 to 30 all time. But with a title or 2, I think he gets catapulted into that 15 to 20 range, being one of the greatest passers as well as three-point shooters of his time. And lastly, probably this is maybe more of a what-if than an actual finals matchup we would have seen, because honestly, I don't think they ever got out of the first round. But let's take a look at those late 2000s, early 2010 Blazers. So they had Greg Oden, they had Brandon Roy, Gerald Wallace, Nicola Batum, Marcus Aldridge, Wesley Matthews, a great young core of players. They were all in their early, mid-20s. Imagine if Greg Oden turned into what he was supposed to be, which was the next Bill Russell. What if Brandon Roy doesn't suffer the injuries that shortened his career and made him retire at such a young age? That's a pretty solid nucleus and core that could have done a lot of damage, especially in that late to early 2010 range when the NBA was, I'd say the talent pool was, it wasn't yet at that big three era that we see in 2010, 2011, 2012. I think in 08, 09, and 2010, they had if Greg Oden had become what many of us thought he was going to be, they had a legitimate shot at making the finals. In a loaded West, and with Kobe doing what Kobe was doing at the time, I really think that team could have given them a lot of trouble. So before we go into our next break, I want to let you guys know that we will be discussing the best single games finals performances since 2005. And one last time, remember to stay tuned for the end of the show as I will be discussing my top 10 finals teams of the last 15 years.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host again, Nick Robin, and let us recap what we just discussed. The finals matchups we wish we would have seen are teams that should have made it. I'd say the number one, LeBron versus Kobe. Everyone wants to see the two best players in the world battle out on the biggest stages. Unfortunately, that never came to fruition. Next was that Duncan versus post-Lakers, Heat, Shaq. Would have loved to see them two battle it out again on the biggest stage. Then we looked at the Steve Nash's Suns, arguably the best team of the last 15 years, not even to make a finals appearance. And lastly, we touched upon those late 2000s, early 2010s Blazers and what could have been if Greg Oden and Brandon Roy had stayed healthy. So we're now going into the best single games finals performances of the last 15 years. And it might be recency bias, but I don't think it is, because I don't think I've ever seen anything as incredible as LeBron almost single-handedly beating the greatest team of all time in the 2018 Warriors by himself. The stat line for the game, 19 of 32 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3, 10 of 11 from the lines, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 51 points against not just the best team of the last decade, but possibly the greatest team of all time. I remember watching that game. I was in a San Francisco bar with a ton of Warriors fans. For those of you out there that don't know, I'm quite a huge fan of LeBron. I think he's definitely the third greatest player of all time, right behind Michael Jordan, of course, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But going to that finals, I think nobody gave Cleveland a chance of winning even a single game. As if you remember, Kyrie had just left in the offseason for the Celtics in a trade for Isaiah Thomas. Unfortunately for the Cavs, that did not work out in their favor, as Isaiah Thomas was hurt nearly the entire year. They ended up trading him mid-season. And I remember LeBron put on one of the greatest postseasons of all time, game-winning shots against the Pacers, sweeping the Raptors in the second round, and then taking 7 games to beat a depleted Celtics team that was missing their best player in Kyrie Irving. So LeBron comes into those finals, losing in 2017, having lost in 2017 to the Warriors. And I think at that time in America, we were sick of just seeing LeBron versus the Warriors every year, Cavs versus Warriors, because to be honest, after the Cavs won in 2016, I don't think anyone really wanted to see the Cavaliers, Cleveland, in the finals anymore. It's just not a big media market. I mean, yeah, it's not a big media market, but still, LeBron, the best player in the world, going up against the Warriors for the 4th consecutive year. But yes, again, I was in a bar in San Francisco, ton of Warriors fans, which, honestly, they might be some of the more obnoxious fans that I've been around, because before they won in 2015, they were they arguably could have been put in the conversation as the worst or second to worst franchise in the entire NBA, them and the Clippers. But it looks like the fortunes for both of those teams have turned around over the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm in the bar. LeBron's taking it to the Warriors, getting everything he wants, really controlling the game. I think this is his peak. I think at this point, LeBron could do whatever he wanted on the court. He controlled the entire pace of the game. And it was just an unbelievable performance. Unfortunately, it comes down to the last couple minutes. George Hill at the line, career 80% free throw shooter, misses a free throw. J.R. Smith gets the ball. He's in no man's land, throws the ball out, doesn't realize the game is tied. And as we know, it went into overtime. LeBron on the bench going into overtime is just so frustrated. He's done everything in his power to single-handedly beat this Warriors team that everyone thought was unbeatable. And they lose game 1, and after that, LeBron punches his hand. He doesn't let anyone know until after the series, and they end up getting swept in 4. So that, to me, is probably the best finals performance since 2005. Maybe one of the best finals performance ever in a losing effort. Let's look at the next one. Again, we're looking at a LeBron Cavs team, 2016, Game 5. LeBron and Kyrie combine, or they each have 40 pieces. First time ever in finals history that two teammates had 40 or more points. LeBron, 16 of 30 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks in a crucial Game 5. After the Draymond nut punch in Game 4, Draymond's out. LeBron comes out. Kyrie shows up as well, 17 of 24 from the field, 5 of 7 from 3, 6 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block. 41 points as well. Probably the greatest teammate duo performance in NBA Finals history. I mean, again, as I mentioned, no other teammates have ever each had 40 together in a Finals game. Not Scottie and Michael, not Kobe and Shaq, not Will and whoever he was playing with in any of those finals, Jerry West. So history in the making there. They win Game 5. That shifts the table. They end up going to Game 6 in Cleveland. They win there. Sets the stage for that ultimate Game 7 that I actually watched in Budapest at 3 a.m. LeBron wins the title and finishes off the greatest comeback in NBA history. Speaking of the Game 7, though, this is probably the best performance in a losing effort. Draymond Green's near triple-double in Game 7, 2016. So as I've mentioned a couple times on the podcast today, he nut-punched LeBron, which honestly looked very unintentional from my point of view. I mean, LeBron was the one who went over him, and again, I am a LeBron fan, so I'm not here defending LeBron. LeBron went over him. Draymond gets up, maybe tries to take a swipe at the junk, but he ends up getting suspended, as we all know. Game 5, no Draymond. LeBron and Kyrie go off. Draymond, being the firecracker he is, probably takes it very personally, feels like he's let his team down. He comes out in Game 7 ready to play. In a regulation game, he plays 47 out of 48 minutes, and he is unconscious from 3. Draymond's not normally known as a three-point sniper, but in this game, he's 11 of 15 from the field and 6 of 8 from 3. I remember watching the game and being like, how do these keep going in? This guy is not that good of a three-point shooter, but somehow when the moment is there, he takes advantage of it. So 15 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 shy of a triple-double, 2 steals, 32 points in a losing effort. If the Warriors win that game, everyone is picking up Draymond Green, putting them on his shoulders. He blew it in Game 4 by getting himself suspended for Game 5, but he makes up for it with one of the greatest Game 7 performances in NBA Finals history. Unfortunately for the Warriors, LeBron gets the block, Kevin Love gets the stop on Curry, and Cleveland wins their first title in franchise history, and the first title for Cleveland in nearly 50 years. So, moving on, we're going to another one of LeBron's former teammates, but before they were teammates, Dwayne Wade saved the Heat in Game 3 in the 2006 NBA Finals. We're down 2-0 to the Mavs, trailing going to the fourth quarter. Dwayne Wade goes off for the game. He's 14 of 26 from the field, 1 of 2 from threes, not known as a three-point shooter, 13 of 18 from the line, 13 rebounds, 1 turnover, and 42 points as he leads his team to victory. And as we know from there, the Heat win 4 straight. Dwayne Wade, at just the young age of 24, wins Finals MVP, gets his first title, and we see the blossoming of a superstar. I think at the time, we're like, this guy, he almost plays more like MJ than Kobe does. The guy at 24 wins a championship nearly by himself in that finals, because Shaq, I'd say, is a little past his prime at that point. I believe he only averaged about 15 to 16 in the playoffs, but Dwayne Wade put the team on his back and single-handedly brought them back from a 2-0 deficit. Again, only 24 years old. This is 2006. The world is his oyster this time. We don't know what he's going to do moving forward. We expect this guy to win 3-4 championships. In 2009, a couple years later, he has one of the greatest seasons of all time, averaging 38 and 8. And we end up, as we know, ends up teaming up with LeBron, winning a couple more championships. So I'm going to go with now my best defensive finals appearance. Best defensive finals performance. And that goes to 2009, Game 4 of the finals for Dwight Howard. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. They lose 4-1 to Kobe and the Lakers. But in this game that the Orlando unfortunately lost in overtime, Dwight Howard grabs 21 rebounds, 15 on the defensive end, and has 9 blocks. At this time, we're like, this guy might be the greatest defensive force we've ever seen. He's unbelievable. He's completely put this game in grasp of his team just from his work on the defensive end. But as we know, Kobe showed up, and they lose 4-1 in a series that was honestly probably closer than what the finals record shows you. And then lastly, an honorable mention, the 2010 NBA Finals, Ray Allen, I like to call the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde impression. In Game 2, Ray Allen is unconscious, hitting 8 of 11 three-pointers, an NBA Finals record that stands until Curry breaks the record in 2018. So the same finals as when LeBron drops 51 points, drops 9 three-pointers against the Cavs. One more moment. I'm going to take a pause here and look at Steph Curry's three-point finals records before we go back to the Ray Allen, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde impression. So just so we know, Curry holds the NBA Finals three-point record with 9. Not only does he hold that, but he also has made 7 three-pointers 1, 2, 3, 4 other times in NBA Finals history. So not only did he have 9 in one game, but he's had 7 4 other times. Out of the only players who have had 7 or more threes, he accounts for 5 of the 16 games. 5 of the 16 games, Curry holds NBA Finals records for three-pointers in a single game. That just shows you not just how good Curry is, but how much the game has changed. Now back to Ray Allen. So in game 2 against the Lakers, they end up losing in 7. Ray Allen hits 8 of them threes, again, a finals record. The next game, he goes 0 for 13 from the field and 0 for 8 from three-point land. One day, you're the hottest shooter in the world. The next day, you can't shoot a lick. It just shows you that as a shooter, you just got to shoot. Shooters got to shoot, and it's either going to go in or it's not, and you just got to continue because eventually they're going to start going in again. But yeah, so those are my key NBA Finals performances of the last 15 years. I'm going to take a break for a sec, and when we come back, we are going to break down my top 10 NBA Finals teams. Not just the winners, but a couple of the losers as well, since 2005. So stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And we're back here now on the GSMC podcast. And on our last segment, we discussed some of the best single-game finals performance from the last 15 years, including LeBron's Game 1 in the 2018 finals, where he dropped 51, but unfortunately, JR didn't have his head in the game and made a boneheaded mistake at the last minute. The 2016 Game 5 for LeBron and Kyrie, where they dropped 40 points apiece. Draymond's infamous Game 7 redemption fell short. 2006 Game 3 of the finals for D. Wade, saving the Heat when they were down 2-0. Dwight Howard's monster defensive performance in Game 4, the 2009 finals. And lastly, the honorable mention of Ray Allen's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde performance in Game 2 and 3 of the NBA Finals. So with that now in the rearview mirror, I am about to move on to my favorite part of the podcast, which is my weekly top 10. And for this week, we will be discussing the top 10 best finals teams from the past 15 years. And like last week, we're going to start with the honorable mention. And I'd like to begin with the 2009 LA Lakers. And really, it's not because I don't think they were one of the better teams of the last 15 years, but in terms of what that championship represented for the Lakers and Kobe Bryant, they were 67-15 in the regular season, first place in the Western Conference. They went on a 16-7 playoff run, beating the Magic 4-1 in the finals. And the interesting thing about this team is just, looking at the roster, it really wasn't that great of a team. You have a Andrew Bynum, who by age 26 is out of the league. You'll have, of course, we have prime Kobe. So we'll start with that. We have prime Kobe Bryant at the peak of his powers in the NBA, just coming off a MVP season in 2008. Then we have Andrew Bynum, the starting center, who, as we know, after he left the Lakers, he was out of basketball by age 26. We have Lamar Odom, who 2 years later would win Sixth Man of the Year, but once he got traded to the Dallas Mavericks, he's out of basketball in a couple of years. We have Meta World Peace, who he just needs to stay in this dimension because we don't know where his head's at times. And then looking through the roster, we have Pau Gasol, who did make the All-Star team that year, who is the second best player on this team. But outside of that, I mean, Derek Fisher, he's in his 12th year in the NBA. We don't have many solid. I mean, we have a young Trevor Ariza, but outside of that, I mean, not really the most talented roster. And the fact that he won this championship without a big three just makes it that much more impressive. And Kobe did put up one of the best finals in recent memory, averaging 32, 7.5 assists, 5.6 rebounds, and 1.4 steals and 1.4 blocks per game. My next team up is the 2006 Heat. And I would say that the 2005 Heat was better. They did win a couple more games, but just the fact that they had a young D Wade on their team, and also Shaquille O'Neal, who was just on the downside of his career, but still a solid contributor to the team, averaging 20 and 10. But outside of that, I mean, they had White Chocolate, an aging Alonzo Mourning at 35. A young Udonis Haslem, who ended up winning a championship with LeBron later on, but still a great finals team. And then lastly, my first team to not win the finals, but just because of what they represented from a team perspective, I have to go with the 2005 Pistons, 54 and 28 in the regular season, lost in the finals in a Game 7 to the Spurs. Just the team, they meshed so well together, that starting five with Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace. It's just a very underrated team, and the fact that they kept opponents under 90 points a game is absurd. I think the lowest this year is about 103, 104, so it really shows how much basketball has changed in the last 15 years. So without further notice, we are going to begin my top 10 best finals teams since 2005, and we're going to start with the 2010-2011 Dallas Mavericks, who I mentioned earlier had one of the greatest individual runs by Dirk Nowitzki. Literally put the team on his back with that fadeaway, one-legged jumper. He was tremendous in the playoffs, averaging, I believe, around 28 points for the entire playoff run. And really, I mean, the second best player, it's hard to tell who even the second best player on the team was, because you have Sean Marion, Jason Terry, older, wise Jason Kidd, and then Tyson Chandler, who's really the difference maker for them once he got traded to them in that middle through the season. That was really the difference maker on what got them over the hump, and when they were able to beat those Heat in 4-2 in the finals. And of course, Dirk won the finals MVP. Moving on to number 9, the 2012 Thunder. The reason I put them in is because it's just a disappointment to the entire NBA that we weren't able to see more of this Thunder team. They went 47-19, a strike-shortened season. They lost in the finals to the Heat. Kevin Durant was just coming into his own at age 23. So you have a 23-year-old Kevin Durant, a 23-year-old Russell Westbrook, a 22-year-old James Harden, Serge Ibaka, and a 27-year-old Kendrick Perkins. So we're talking about a very, very young team on the brink of stardom. We have a couple veterans in there with Nick Collison and Derek Fisher, but it's just, like I said, 3 MVPs on the same team at one time. No one knew that then, but we all knew how special those 3 players were. So it's disappointing to see them not make it to another finals afterward. Number 8, we have the first big 3 to win a championship. Because you have back in 95-96 when the Rockets got Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, and Hakeem. They didn't end up winning it all, but this first big 3, first real big 3 with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. They were tremendous when going 66-16 in the regular season. They hit a rough patch in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, being taken to 7 games by both the Atlanta Hawks and Cleveland Cavaliers. They ended up going 16-10 and beating out the Lakers 4-2 with Pierce taking home Finals MVP. So really, this is the start of the Big 3 era in 2008, and then in 2010, we see LeBron team up with Chris Bosh and D Wade. We'll get into them later. So now at number 7, the 2016 Warriors. And you have to put them in here. They went 73-9. They fell one game short of repeating. And we all know what happened. The Draymond nut shot. And LeBron and Kyrie showed up, gave them the business, and they ended up losing 3 straight, 2 at home. Unprecedented comeback. But really, that team, 73-9, people say they ran out of steam, but did they really? I mean, they were one game short. They were one game short of winning back-to-back titles. They went 73-9. They were going to be deemed the greatest team of all time. Unfortunately for them, they ran into an angry LeBron and a young, hungry Kyrie. And moving on to another Warriors team, the previous year, so the 6th best team is the 2015 Warriors. 67-15, 16-5 in the playoffs. Finals MVP, this is where it gets interesting. The finals MVP is Andre Iguodala, who is maybe the 3rd or 4th best player on the team, but the fact that he played such tough defense and made it tough for LeBron, I mean, whenever you can guard the best player in the world and make him somewhat ineffective, you got to tip your cap there. So very interesting finals MVP there. So we're halfway through the list. I'm going to go back and say and rewind where we're at. So we started with number 10, the 2011 Mavericks. Number 9, the 2012 Thunder. Number 8, the 2008 Celtics. Number 7, the 2016 Warriors. And number 6, the 2015 Warriors. There's going to be a lot more Warriors on this list, so we're just getting started. Number 5, the 2016 Cavaliers. Honestly, the 2017 might have been better offensively, but the 2016 team won the title and got the deal done, and that's what's most important. And they had the greatest comeback in finals history, coming back 3-1 to the Warriors, as we mentioned several times. LeBron was unbelievable in the series as he led both teams in every major statistical category, including points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game, and steals per game. Just an unreal finals performance that I think over the years is going to continue to look better and better on his resume. On to the next one, another LeBron-led team, the 2013 Heat, giving them the nod over the 2012 Heat because they did go 66-16 in a full season, had the 27-game winning streak, and ended up going 16-7 in the playoffs. Again, LeBron James with the finals MVP. Now we're moving to the top 3. And a team I think that doesn't get enough credit, when credit is due, and that's the 2014 Spurs. They fell one game short the year before. We all know the Ray Allen shot. They come back next year. They're hungry. Young Kawhi wins MVP. They go 62-10 in the regular season, 16-7 in the playoffs. They demolish the Heat in the finals, the biggest blowout in finals history. They win 4-1, beating them by almost double digits in every win. So that's definitely a team that I think doesn't get enough credit. They have Tim Duncan in one of his last productive years in the NBA. You have Manu Ginobili. You have a very veteran-led team with Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, a 22-year-old Kawhi Leonard, as I mentioned, Boris Diaw, wily veteran, Danny Green, great three-point shooter, Tiago Splitter, Patty Mills. So a very deep team and a very balanced team. No one scored more than 16.5 points in the regular season. So they were very balanced all year round and had some great three-point shooting. So now we're into the final 2. And with no surprise, the number 2 team is the 2018 Warriors. They went 58-24 in the regular season, 16-5 in the playoffs. That second season with Durant, and they ended up sweeping the Cavs in the finals. So they were just as good as the year before, but just a little bit less. And that's where we come to number 1. And the best team, not only the last 15 years, but probably the best team in NBA history. During the regular season, they went 67-15. They had the number 1 offensive rating in the league, the number 2 defensive rating. And, I mean, what can we say? They lost one game in the finals that, honestly, they probably should have won, but the refs got a little bit involved in that game 3. But they just dominated throughout. 16-1 playoff run. They have Durant, the first or second greatest player in the NBA in the last 15 years. the two greatest sharpshooters in NBA history, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, Draymond Green, a great bench with Matt Barnes, Ian Clark, Iguodala, Sean Livingston, JaVale McGee, McCaw, just a lot of different lineups you could throw out at people. And, I mean, the records speak for themselves. They didn't get to 73 wins, but 16-1 in the playoffs, the best playoff winning percentage in NBA history. So that's it, folks. The 2017 Warriors are the greatest finals team, in my opinion, of the past 15 years, and I would say of all time as well. So rewinding the list, we have the 2011 Mavericks at number 10, 2012 Thunder at number 9, the 2008 Celtics at number 8, the 2016 No Championship Warriors at number 7, the 2015 First Championship of the Warriors. Number 5, we have the 2016 Cavs. Number 4, LeBron's repeat. Number 3, the 2014 Redemption Spurs. 2018 repeat Warriors. And then number 1, the 2017 Warriors. So that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you for listening to the GSMC podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.